The Trump administration has made it very clear they don't want migrants coming into this country by any means, even by asylum. And this week, the Supreme Court helped them by allowing the administration to make migrants apply for asylum in the first new country they cross into, even if that country is unsafe or doesn't have a fully developed asylum process. For many Central American migrants, that means they'd have to apply for asylum in Mexico before they could apply for asylum in the United States, even while the new rule continues to be challenged in court. Here with me now, the lead attorney arguing against the Trump asylum rule, Lee Gelernt, is the deputy director of the ACLU Immigrants' Rights Project. Lee, good to see you. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Lee, let's just explain, because Donald Trump has done a remarkable job of confusing immigration and asylum in the minds of people. They are actually different things. And asylum is a treasured and important thing that allows people who are facing some sort of persecution to seek refuge. Yeah. That's why we call them refugees in many cases.
Absolutely. So this country has had a proud tradition of welcoming people. And right now, it's Central Americans who need our help, and everyone says, oh, we don't need to help. But people need to think about the history of this country and their own families and maybe ask their grandparents, did you ever need asylum? And we're down a dangerous path where we're going to turn our back on people who genuinely need protection. And I think one thing that people need to be clear about is we're not saying everyone's entitled to asylum, but there has to be a process.
Right.
This rule shuts down the process automatically. And everyone says, what's so bad about applying in another country? And nothing in principle is so bad. We have that with Canada. But you can't tell people to wait in dangerous countries and then try to apply for asylum in Mexico or Guatemala when they don't have fully functioning asylum systems. The administration knows very well that these people can't wait around in those countries and be safe and then apply for asylum. This is effectively just a way to end asylum at the southern border.
So just to be clear, for people who come in seeking asylum from Central America who have been able to go through a process, in other words, they say at the border crossing or to a border guard that they're seeking asylum, they're then adjudicated. Most times, historically, they've been let in to be adjudicated at a second point. But the overwhelming majority of people don't get asylum, just to be clear. The overwhelming number of applicants, if you're worried about it being overrun by asylum seekers in America, that's not actually what the record indicates.
Right. Well, that's true. But by the same token, which I think you've pointed out, is there are many people with meritorious claims. So if you shut the whole process down,
you miss those people.
Exactly. And so all we're saying is there has to be a process. Now, the administration wants to make the process more efficient. Great. Make it more efficient. They can put more asylum officers there. What they're doing is channeling money to different things like the border wall instead of making the process more efficient. But you can't just shut the process down.
So we've muddied a couple of issues in this whole discussion about asylum, because there are meritorious claims, and this administration says lots of the claims are not meritorious. So their answer to that, the logical answer to that would be, okay, what's broken? What do you think is broken about the system? What's letting people who don't have meritorious claims remain here as asylum seekers, and fix that? But instead, they're making it harder for 100% of asylum seekers.
Exactly. And the other thing people need to understand is the administration is very fond of saying, well, once you let an asylum seeker in the country, they won't show up for their hearing. The statistics show absolutely that's not true, that 97% of asylum seekers' families show up for their hearings.
Yes.
So it's simply not true. We really need to understand that these are people fleeing horrible danger. And a lot of them are fleeing the gangs that this administration says they detest, which we all should detest. But then when you get a parent and a child who stand up to the gang and say, we're not going to join, and they try to come to the United States and say, give us shelter from these gangs, because if we stay there and don't join, we're going to be killed, we send them right back.
Part of the problem, though, is with the way these gangs work is that it's economic pressure, right? You're not working if you don't align yourself with a gang or do what they're going to do. You might be subject to sexual assault or the kind of labor. It doesn't meet everybody's standard of what oppression or persecution or danger looks like. There are a lot of people who say, hey, that you don't earn enough money or that you are sort of economically controlled by gangs doesn't qualify you for asylum.
Right. Well, the difference between these gangs, it's just not regular criminal activity. These gangs sort of operate as quasi-governments and control the whole city. So this is not where you can just avoid a single person in your neighborhood who might be a bully. This is gangs who control the town. They set curfews. They tax you. And so this is very much, in a classic sense, persecution.
I want to go to a bigger conversation you and I were having in the break. Justice Sotomayor had a dissenting opinion on this, in which she said it is especially concerning, moreover, that the rule the government promulgated topples decades of settled asylum practices and affects some of the most vulnerable people in the Western Hemisphere without affording the public a chance to weigh in.
Right.
This is an interesting point, because granting of asylum, I think, is in the American fabric. It actually is kind of at the bottom of the Statue of Liberty, too.
Yeah.
Right? It is what we believe to be good. I think your argument that it's a process issue, 100% of Americans would agree with, right?
Right?
There must be a process by which you evaluate someone's claim.
Right.
But Justice Sotomayor is saying we're not being consulted. We are changing something very, very fundamental about this nation of immigrants.
Right. So I think there's two critical points. And Congress, who controls the asylum laws for 40 years, has made it clear that just because you go through another country doesn't mean you can be automatically denied asylum unless there's a determination those countries are fair. This administration didn't try to determine that those countries have safe and fair processes,
right,
because they couldn't. But not only did they have a sea change of 40 years of asylum law, they did it without what's called notice and comment, a standard practice where you give the public and experts the right to weigh in.
Hearings and testimony.
And that's what Justice Sotomayor is saying.
Yeah.
That, look, there is sea changes here and no one's weighing in, so that they're based on the administration's facts and no expert facts.
Good to see you as always. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.